When someone says nothing happened, it means that something happened. Hi, dear Lisa. I recently got back from the resort, and I want to share with you a story that happened to me and my boyfriend Brad. It started out so rosy, but it turned out that the sun was hiding shadows. Brad and I had been dreaming of this trip for a long time. We finally booked our tickets to a luxury resort in the Caribbean. Along for the ride were our friends Jennifer and Mark. We had spent a lot of time together, and it seemed like this trip would be the perfect way to relax and enjoy each other's company. The first day was fabulous. We arrived at the resort in the morning, and the first thing that caught our eyes was the endless white beach and turquoise sea. After checking into our cozy bungalows, we headed to the beach. Brad settled down on a lounger with a book, and I decided to go for a swim. The water was warm and clear, and I felt perfectly happy. When I got back to shore, I noticed Brad sitting there looking at Jennifer. No big deal, I thought, just admiring her beauty. Jennifer had always been a spectacular woman, with long brown hair and a slender figure. But something about the expression on his face struck me as unusual. Maybe it was just the play of light? The next morning, we decided to explore the surrounding area. The resort offered many excursions, and we opted for a hike through the rainforest. The guide met us at the entrance to the forest and gave us a brief briefing, explaining basic safety rules and pointing out interesting places we could visit. The tropical forest turned out to be a true wonder of nature. Tall trees with thick crowns created a dense green canopy, through which the sun's rays broke through, creating bizarre patterns on the ground. Exotic birds with brightly colored feathers fluttered among the branches, emitting melodious trills. The air was fragrant with the scents of flowers and wet earth. We walked along narrow paths, stopping occasionally to admire unusual plants or to listen to the guide's stories about the local flora and fauna. Brad stayed close to me, sometimes taking my hand to help me over a particularly difficult section of the path. Jennifer and Mark walked a little behind me, carrying on a leisurely conversation. After about an hour of walking, we came to a small clearing surrounded by tall palm trees. Here the guide suggested we take a break and have a snack. We laid out the sandwiches and fruit we had brought with us and sat down on the soft mosses and grasses. As we ate, I happened to notice Brad looking at Jennifer. At first I thought it was just a casual glance, but then I realized that his attention had been on her for much longer than usual. His gaze was more focused, almost greedy. He couldn't seem to take his eyes off her face, her hair, her movements. It made me a little wary. I remembered yesterday at the beach, when Brad had also been looking at Jennifer with a special interest. Could it be a coincidence? Or something more? These thoughts began to worry me, but I decided not to give it much thought. Maybe it was just my imagination and Brad really just admires Jennifer's beauty. After lunch, we continued on our way. The forest grew thicker and thicker, and sometimes we had to wade through thickets of vines and bushes. Brad helped me through the obstacles, but his gaze occasionally returned to Jennifer. I tried to ignore it, but I was growing uneasy inside. By late afternoon, we were back at the resort, tired but satisfied. Brad suggested we go out to dinner at a local restaurant, and I happily agreed. However, despite the pleasant experience, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. My intuition told me that it was more than simple admiration, and that I was going to have to deal with something more complicated. Day 3 began with a morning swim. Brad and Mark went snorkeling, while Jennifer and I stayed on shore enjoying the sun. Jennifer talked about her new project at work, and I listened to her while keeping an eye on Brad from afar. He wasn't swimming far from shore, but his gaze kept returning to Jennifer. I began to worry about this obsessive observation, so I decided to ask her if she'd noticed anything unusual. "Jenny, Brad seems to have a particular crush on you today," I began cautiously. She laughed and waved her hand. "Oh, that's just a habit of his. He was always attentive to detail, probably just fascinated by my new hat." Her answer reassured me, but I still had my doubts. We spent the 4th day water skiing. Brad turned out to be a real master, and Jennifer couldn't help but rave about it. Every time he did a trick, she clapped her hands and laughed. I stood nearby watching the scene and suddenly felt a slight pang of jealousy. Why was Brad trying so hard for Jennifer? Why did his eyes keep stopping on her more and more? After lunch, we went for a walk along the waterfront. Brad walked ahead, talking with Mark, and Jennifer and I followed behind them. Suddenly, Brad stopped and looked at Jennifer with some special warmth. She responded with a slight smile, and for a moment there was an invisible connection between them. A feeling of unease mixed with curiosity swept over me. What was going on? On the sixth day of our trip, we decided to have a picnic on the beach. While Brad was preparing the food, I approached him and asked him directly, "Brad, what's going on? I see the way you're looking at Jennifer. Is it something serious?" He hesitated, then sighed and said, "I'm sorry, honey. It's just, Jennifer has such a vibrant personality. Her energy draws me in. But I love you, and you are the most important thing to me." His words sounded sincere, but a doubt crept in. If he's so attracted to Jennifer, what does that mean for us? Meanwhile, Jennifer came closer, having heard our conversation. She glanced at Brad, then at me, and her face expressed embarrassment. "Emma, I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. I didn't mean to." No, it's okay," I interrupted her, trying to stay calm. "It's just, I need time to process." The picnic was a tense affair. We pretended that everything was fine, but each of us felt that something had changed. I spent the next few days thinking what to do. Continue to watch Brad and Jennifer or try to forget about it? Maybe it was just a temporary infatuation that would soon pass? One evening, as we sat around a campfire on the beach, I decided to discuss the situation with Mark. He listened to me carefully, then said, "You know, Emma, sometimes people face situations like this. The important thing is not to panic, but to try to understand what exactly is causing these feelings. Maybe Brad just needs something new, some inspiration. But that doesn't mean he's going to leave you." His words helped me calm down a little. Maybe Mark was right. Maybe Brad just needs support and understanding. It was day 9 of our stay at the resort, but the tension between us was building. Brad continued to be overly attentive to Jennifer, and I felt like I was losing control of the situation. A whole range of emotions were simmering inside me: jealousy, insecurity, anger. But I tried to keep it all to myself, hoping that everything would work itself out. In the evening, we decided to go out for a romantic dinner at a restaurant at the top of the hill. The view from there was amazing. The sunset sky was painting the ocean in golden and pink hues. We took a table on the outdoor terrace and the waiter brought the menu. I chose salad and seafood, and Brad ordered steak. Jennifer and Mark chose fish entrees. While we waited for our orders, Brad and Jennifer began to have a lively discussion about some movie they had both recently seen. Their conversation was becoming more and more intimate, and they were paying less and less attention to the others. Mark tried to draw me into the conversation, but I was too absorbed in what was going on. Unable to stand it, I got up from the table and went out onto the balcony to cool off a bit. Brad noticed this and soon followed me out. "Emma, what's wrong?" he asked, walking over to me. "Are you seriously asking me that?" I replied, not holding back my emotions. "You've been flirting with Jennifer all night. I feel superfluous here." Brad tried to take my hands, but I pulled away. "Look, I understand how you feel," he began, "but let's try to figure this out. Yes, Jennifer has my attention, but that doesn't mean I'm going to leave you. I'm just attracted to new people, new ideas. That doesn't change the way I feel about you. But how can I trust you if you're always looking at her?" I objected. "It's not just a crush, Brad. It's more than that." He took a deep breath and lowered his head. "I'm sorry, Emma. I didn't mean to hurt you. Let's go back inside and discuss this calmly." We returned to the table and the atmosphere at dinner became even more strained. Jennifer sensed something was wrong and tried to lighten the mood with jokes, but to no avail. Mark seemed to realize what was going on and tried to remain neutral. Dinner was over quickly, and we decided to head back to the bungalow. On the way back, Brad walked beside me, but we both remained silent. I knew that this moment was a turning point in our relationship. Something had to change or we risked losing each other. The next morning I woke up early, feeling shattered. I had hardly slept at all during the night, thoughts swirling around in my head, keeping me awake. I got out of bed and walked out onto the terrace of our bungalow. The sun was just beginning to rise above the horizon, coloring the sky in soft pastel tones. I took a deep breath of the fresh sea air, trying to calm myself down. After a while, Brad appeared on the terrace. He looked tired and worried. We stood in silence, staring at the sunrise until he finally broke the silence. Emma, I know last night was hard. I want to apologize for my behavior. I really didn't mean to hurt you. I turned to him and met his gaze. Brad's eyes read sincerity and remorse. I just don't know how to react to all this, I said. I feel betrayed and cheated. Do you realize that your actions make me question our relationship? Brad nodded. Yes, I realize that. And I want you to know that I love you. You are the most important woman in the world to me. I'm just confused, and I need time to sort out my feelings. Time? I questioned. What if in that time you decide you're more interested in Jennifer than me? Brad sighed and took my hands in his. No, Emma. I'm not going to choose between you two. I love you and I want to be with you. But I need to understand what's going on inside of me. Maybe this is just a temporary weakness and it will pass. We talked for a long time, discussing our feelings and fears. Brad promised that he would try to pay more attention to me and take care of me. I believed him, but there was still anxiety inside. What if this wasn't just a temporary infatuation? The last 2 days at the resort were quieter. We tried to spend more time together, enjoying the beauty around us and taking our minds off our problems. Brad really tried to be more attentive to me, and that helped me feel more confident. However, when we got home, reality smacked us in the face. Brad continued to act strange, sometimes withdrawing into himself, brooding. I could sense that he was still struggling with internal contradictions. We talked again and he confirmed that he needed time. A few weeks passed, and one evening Brad came to me looking serious. He sat down next to me and took my hands in his. Emma, he began, I've been doing a lot of thinking and analyzing my feelings. I realized that my affection for Jennifer was temporary. It was just a crush and it's gone. I love you very much and I want to continue building our relationship. I stared at him, trying to figure out if that was true. Deep down, I believed Brad was sincere. But there were still doubts. Thank you for sharing this with me, I said. But I need time to. I need to make sure I can trust you again. Brad agreed, and we decided to give our relationship a chance. We started going out on dates like we had in the first few months of dating, getting to know each other again. Gradually, I began to feel our relationship getting stronger. Brad was proving his love with actions, not words. Today, 6 months after that unfortunate trip, I can say that we have overcome the crisis. Our relationship has grown deeper and stronger. We are learning to trust each other and solve problems together. Of course, sometimes there are moments of doubt, but we are working through it. This experience has shown me that real relationships require effort and patience. Sometimes you have to go through hard times to realize how important your partner is. And I'm grateful to Brad for sticking with me and fighting for us. Thank you, Lisa, for listening to my story. I hope it helps you better understand how to deal with situations like this.